in a way, I'm going to try and talk you through what actually happened in the meeting, if that's okay. The words I used and the experience the client had. Is that okay? It's the experience and the wow factor, if you like, that the client feels and experiences. So, the best way of doing that then is to show you a few case studies. Now, first of all, remember the 3 hats. So, if I can just remind you from this morning, 3 parts to my job. Life planning, yeah, the first meeting, if you like, I'll call it life planning. It's just understanding where the client is now, how they got to where they are now, being interested in them and their story, and then also helping them to trust you to tell you sufficient about what they're trying to achieve from now on, yeah, and where they're trying to head to. And just you being interested in them to that degree says you're worth something to them. The reality is that not many people are interested in other people. This sounds crazy, right? The human condition that we all suffer from is the ego, right? We all have a big ego, don't we? Well, whether it's big or little, I don't know. Perhaps mine's just big. But we all have an ego. And the ego, the human condition is to constantly think about number one, which is you. Am I right? Or is it just me that feels this way? Do you know what I mean? It's me, me, me. All the time it's me, me, me. So in the UK, people say, how are you, right? But they're not really interested in the answer that they get. It's just a greeting, that's all it is. They're not really interested in the other person. So my point is that if you do this well, a client meeting well, a discovery meeting, a fact-find meeting well, and you really show that you're interested in another human being, that is rare. And if they're a business owner, for example, if you're talking to a business owner and I show that I'm really interested in how he started his business, really interested, and he can tell me his story, no one else is interested in his story. Certainly his wife isn't anymore, for example. She hears it and she's heard it too many times. But I'm interested, really interested. So that's how you create the relationship, you understand? So life planning is about the connection and the understanding. Financial planning, yeah, is what you then do to identify the resources that the client has towards help that can be used to help them to achieve those life objectives. Make sense? And that can include money, that can include time, I guess, but it's basically revolves around financial money, yeah, they have now, and money they will have in the future, including income. And also, more importantly, including expenditure. Because don't forget, expenditure drives lifestyle, am I right? Expenditure equals lifestyle, or lifestyle equals expenditure, you know? Big lifestyle, big expenditure, little lifestyle, little expenditure. So that's financial planning. We'll talk about that and demonstrate that to you now. And then finally, yeah, the IFA part, the product part. Well, the boring bit, yeah? I'm not going to talk about that today. That's easy.
Why do you constantly say that's easy? Because I think that's the most difficult hat.
It's the most can be the most time-consuming hat, and it can be.
Time-consuming, just making choices.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I'm sure about to make them well for your client.
Yeah. Well, arguably that's because advisors think that they've got to get it right with the product, so right, they spend all their time trying to get it right. But time proves you can never get it right, so why try? People try because they've got nothing else better to do. Well, I think you have got something better to do, it's called this. And arguably, if I create a financial plan for a client, it doesn't have to be the best product that I sell or transact to them. As long as it gets the job done, that's all they care about. So you don't have to try and be the best product provider anymore. Does that make sense? So it takes the pressure off, actually. Now, clearly, therefore, you can then create systems, like Alan's done, systems and processes to automate some of that process through your investment choices or your model portfolios or whatever, which I'm sure you guys can help you do. So really, what I'm going to show you now is this bit. Don't forget the bucket, okay? This thing here. Always remind them. So if I can explain to you, just go back one step. First meeting with a client is this one, life planning meeting. I call it that, fact finding. I finish that meeting with the bucket presentation. The client understands what I'm now going to do. I leave them with an expenditure questionnaire, which they then fill in themselves. I go back to my office, if I've seen them at their office, and I then start producing the financial plan, which I will then go back to show them, which is what I'm going to show you now, okay? So the financial planning meeting is all about them and their goals and their aspirations and their financial future. Okay? It's not about a product. You understand? We haven't going to talk about products. So I always start the financial planning meeting off by reminding them of that bucket. You know, they've been to sleep since I last saw them. And it could have been a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and they may have forgotten some of this stuff. So I always remind them of that concept. Yeah? So, because all I'm going to talk about at the second meeting is what's going to happen to their bucket. Let me show you how I demonstrate it. The first client I'm going to share with you is Mr. and Mrs. How much is enough, yeah? A client, they didn't come to me saying, how much is enough, Paul? They didn't say that. They didn't even know they had a problem in that area. But I call them Mr. and Mrs. How much is enough because that's what the end result was. They needed to know. If I can give you some details of the client then, it's Neil and Lynn. Neil's 45, Lynn's 43. Neil is a small business owner. 5 employees, that's all he's got, including himself and Lynn. That's a small firm, isn't it? 2 daughters in private education, which are costing him a lot of money. His hobby is motorsport and travel. Okay? What Neil has got, as well as a Porsche 911, which he loves to drive, he's also got a small track car and a hill climb car. He spends his weekends doing hill climbs. That's not possible around here, is it? It's just dawned on me, but in the UK... Okay, hill climbs are when they race at great speed up bendy hills and so on. And then also sort of Grand Prix days and all that sort of stuff. And he's passionate about it, and he spends a fair bit of his money on that hobby.
What's her hobby?
Her hobby is it's supporting him doing that because she loves it too. Yeah, it has to be. And also travel, okay? And also they've got a bit of land, and they have a couple of ponies and chickens and things like that. So that's the sort of life they've created. His goal is to retire at 55, okay? And when I met Neil, when I do my fact find, I say to a client, you know, what would be your one major overriding financial objective? He said to me, to be in a position to be able to retire at 55. Now, rather than me just carrying on and saying, great, fine, yeah, I want to know why. I want to test that theory. So I'll say to him, why 55, Neil, is what I said to him. Why 55? Why not 60? Why not 50? Why 55? He said, Paul, my father, that's Neil saying now, Paul, my father died, worked till 65 and was dead at 67. I don't want that to happen to me. I want to be able to retire while I'm still young enough to do the things that I love to do, which happen to be motorsport, you know, fairly risky stuff. You've got to be fairly agile. You can't wait till you're 70 or 80 to do those sort of things. You know, he's already doing it now, but he wants to do an awful lot more of that. Are you with me? So he had a motivation. It was 55. Now, what's he really telling me? Life's not a rehearsal, Paul. You see? Life's not a rehearsal. I want to do this stuff now while I can. And if you dig deep with a client, every client will eventually say to you, that's what drives them. Now, one thing he hates is mortgages. So what he's been doing for years, there's no tax advantages with mortgages in the UK, by the way, anymore. He hates his mortgage, so he's been paying extra money every month off his mortgage to get rid of it as soon as possible, okay? He also hates pension plans. He hates pensions. He'd rather pay money off his mortgage than he would save for his future, okay? And he also hates financial advisors, okay? So, just so you can see here, what started out as quite a nice client, suddenly he's a bad prospect. He hates me. Well, he thinks he hates guys like me, and he hates mortgages and pensions, yeah? So what happened? Let's just talk you through the second meeting. So the first meeting was all about him. What was he trying to achieve? I've just given an indication of that there. The second meeting then, okay? So I sit down with Neil and explain to him that today, Neil, is a financial planning meeting. What we're going to do today is talk about financial planning. What I'm really going to talk about today, Neil, is the bucket. So I talk him through the bucket again, he gets a message, yeah? So what I'm going to do, Neil, to help me show you what's going to happen to your bucket, I need some help. So what I use is a piece of software called Truth Financial Planning Software. Okay, this is available in the UK and in other countries as well now. You can do it in other ways, but this is a piece of software designed specifically for lifestyle financial planners. Now, I use this software, and you'll understand why in just a second, okay? Now, what I then do is I start to use the software to start building up a picture of where this client currently stands. And the first thing I say to the client is, we first of all need to start looking at what's inside your bucket and what's outside of your bucket. Can you now see, I'm talking about financial planning, but I'm really talking about the bucket? So from the client's perception, it's very simple. For a transition from talking about his bucket to using a piece of software, it all seems to fit. It's a gradual process. So let's now first of all look at your current net worth. How much are you currently worth? Now, the end result of this guy here, look, is currently worth £1.4 million. Okay? Now, I don't know whether you personally have big, wealthy clients, small clients, exceedingly wealthy clients. It doesn't really matter. Okay? It just happens to be Neil. Okay? I haven't always had clients like this, but now that's the sort of clients that I ended up with. Now, the end result is he's worth £1.4 million. Okay? It's broken down like this. As you can see here, blue, Neil, that's how much is inside your bucket. Can you see the percentage? So what I would say to Neil is, Neil, of all the money you're worth, 1.4 million, that's how much is in your bucket. That is money you can spend, basically. It's yours. This money here, it's still yours, but you can't spend it until you sell those assets. Would you agree? Would you agree? Neil agreed. You can't argue with it. I know you can't argue with it. Okay, so you haven't got much in your bucket, quite simply. Now, your assets versus your liabilities, basically this guy, worth £1.4 million, has a very small amount of borrowing. Okay? Now, so what I do now, in other words, what I've just done, the client has just agreed with me the breakdown of all those assets. I would have drilled into the detail of these assets, by the way, to be a full breakdown of the value in banks, building societies, insurance policies. You can see in here, look, his home is in there as a value. We've estimated the value of his business, which of course he hasn't sold yet, and other assets that are down here. So that's a breakdown. But it's only that figure there that he can spend, remember. Okay. We then look at the income. In other words, what we've just done here, we've just looked at what's inside the bucket and what's outside, okay? We're now going to look at what's coming into his bucket by way of salary, which is here. So this guy here, it's got pound signs on there at the moment, sterling, okay? It could just as easily say euro, so don't worry about this part. This guy here has got various sources of income for himself and his wife, and after tax, he's left with about £100,000 a year or £8,000 a month to spend. Neil said to me, and Lynn said to me, where does all our money go? And I said, that's a good question. We'll come to that in a second. So can you see that so far? Okay. So what I'm doing with the client is understanding what he's got here, what he's got there, what's coming in now. We'd also then talk about the estimated incomes in the future as well. Okay. Now, this just demonstrates where his money's coming from, and it just basically shows that 98% of this guy's income is coming from his business. And arguably, if his business has a problem, he's got a problem. Now, we then move on to the most important thing of all, Neil, which is basically your expenditure.
I think, to me, it'd be something like this. It allows me to work 4 days a week and take at least 8 weeks a year vacation to the place of my choice, wherever if I like to go sailing, skiing, mountaineering, or just laying on a beach. I'm going to get at least 8 weeks a year minimum. I'm also only going to work for 4 out of 5 days, and I'm never working weekends, and I'm never working evenings. That's the starting point, control of my own time. What is ultimately, if you really drill down and ask these questions of each other, what's important? Well, for most of us, it is spending time with the people who we're close to, friends, family, loved ones. So I want to be able to spend less time at business, in my business, and more time with the people that I really want to spend quality time with, and pursue my hobbies and interests whilst doing so. You know, this is an interesting one. This is part of how things have changed. There used to be, in the UK, they have this magazine we talk about, this Citywire magazine. And it comes out, and they sort of do a profile of different advisors. And one of the questions they ask is, how many clients do you have? And there's almost like a competition to see who could have the most clients. And the people who were listing, I've got 1,000 clients. I've got 2,000. I've seen ones where I've got 5,000 clients. And I said, 5,000, you must be a huge business. And we sort of, how many advisors? There's 3 advisors. They've got 5,000 clients. What sort of service proposition can they be delivering to 5,000 people? Clearly, these are not clients. These are historical, commoditized relationships with somebody who bought a product from them 10 years ago who remains on their database. They are not servicing those clients in any way close to how they ought to be serviced. So in an ideal world, you'd have a number of hand-picked clients, people that appreciate what you do, want to work with you, and you enjoy working with them. And when we talk, the conversation keeps coming back to this concept of stable and recurring income, predictable income. All of us would love to have, I'm sure, I know I do, predictable income in my business, so that I know on January the 1st every year when we open for business, or January the 2nd, or whatever it might be when we open for business, that I can predict the approximate cash flows that are going to come into my business over the next 12 months or so. So moving away from this, I don't know what we're going to earn, it depends who picks up the phone, it depends what we can sell this week or this month or this year. You can't plan a business on that. Most successful businesses outside of financial services have got the ability to at least make a good guess as to how much income they can expect to have coming in. So that would be an essential to me in terms of a perfect financial planning practice. Yeah, I just want it to run smoothly. I want it to be systemized. You know, so many of us, we're coming from this small business mentality that we kind of make it up. We do repeatable practice. We do things which we do on a regular basis. We kind of have to create original thought. What did I do again? I remember I met a client a month ago who was a bit like this. I'll go and find that letter I wrote to him. That is not efficient. Creating systemized processes within a business. When we talk about, it's a bad phrase, but talk about having almost a McDonald's hamburger type process in the back office. I mean, a McDonald's restaurant, for whether you visit it or not, or to your kids there or whatever, one thing it is a very successful process-driven business whereby you can have half a dozen teenagers run this store on the corner, which frankly turns over more income than most of our individual businesses do. What handful of unqualified teenagers running this business. Why? Because it's a process. It's all about process. So if you can drive process and systems in the back office, but have a Gordon Ramsay or a Michelin star front office, the client experience, that's the ideal solution, I would think. It takes time to build it, but it's great and allows you to take these 8 weeks holidays and what have you. You know, you provide a high level of service to your clients. Clearly, that's the key issue. But that's, you should say, cared for. Your clients feel that they're looked after, that you actually do care about them. Because you've only got, say, 50 or 80 clients, you know them all pretty well. You do know that, you do recall, if you've got systems and reminders, you do know that his daughter got married in the summer. So you do say to him, how was the wedding? How did Alison get on? Was it a good day? Blah, blah, blah. Because you know them at a much more deeper level, I suppose. And that client feels cared for. One of the best compliments that I've had in recent years was chatting to this client who said to me, do you know what? You make me feel like I'm your only client. I thought, wow, that's really good. I didn't feel that way at all, but that's his interpretation of our service. Have you got any other clients, or you just look after me? Because every time I pick up the phone, you respond, you get right back to me, you see me, you meet me. Can't always do it, but that's what we're all striving for, so that each one of our individual hand-picked clients feels really, really well cared for. This is the great bit. Not only this, but you love what you do. You really love. You do wake up on a Monday morning with a spring in your step and leap out of bed, and you can't wait to get in to your office or wherever that may be, because you're really enjoying it. You're getting a buzz from the relationship you have with your clients. You're enabling them to make sensible choices in their life. You are doing literally quite life-changing things, or you're giving your clients permission in the nicest possible way to make sensible choices for themselves and their families. And you know what? That's rewarding. That is much more rewarding. Coming from the background that I have, which I'll tell you about in a second, selling products, that's not rewarding. Getting a commission check or a paycheck, it's quite rewarding for a minute, but then again, it's not long-lasting. Knowing that you've actually added value to the lives of people that you like, and you enjoy them, enjoy their company, and that of their families, is very, very rewarding in my experience. So you enjoy doing it. and you feel your work is really purposeful. It's satisfying. It ends up being pretty much the best job you can have if you get it right. I don't think we're still on a journey, as I said at the start. But if you get this right, I think it's about one of the best jobs you can possibly ever have, and one of the best paid, may I say. Now, this is where we get a bit more repetition, some of the things you've heard already. The light bulb moment. There's a series of things happened to me over a period of time. I knew this model was wrong, but I didn't know what was right. I didn't know, I was searching for something. It sounds very spiritual in a way. I was searching for something, but I didn't know what it was. But there was a few, a little light bulb goes off at the top of your brain. And I was reading this book. Again, I didn't know Paul was even going to mention that. So clearly that's a sort of a common approach. And I've heard it from other people as well. And that's all about creating a proper, sustainable, valuable business, not being this entrepreneur myth that I was doing. Left a big company, set up a small business, and working twice the hours I used to work for half the income. The E-myth. We talked also with Lee Eisenberg. That's also, if you haven't read it, it's a great book. It explains it in a book form. It was a bestseller. We give it to clients. We give it to new prospective clients. We mail it out and say, have a read of this, at least skim read it. It will give you a lot about what we will talk about and how it will help and enable you. The one that hasn't been talked about so far is, I don't know if any of you have seen or experienced George Kinder. Anyone know George Kinder? I know he comes to the Netherlands quite a bit now. He's actually just moved to London. Again, he was very influential on my thinking. I don't wholeheartedly buy into everything. That is really quite, I think, a deep, sort of almost life coaching, spiritual kind of way, which is perfectly fine for a lot of people. Didn't quite work for me, but I'll take a bit of it. And I'll take a bit of Eisenberg, and I'll take a bit of Gerber, and I'll take a bit of anything I can. I'll take a bit of Paul Armson's ideas, and I'll take a few others. I'll take Brett Davison ideas, who I've worked with, who again, I know we met him yesterday. I know he's in the Netherlands as well. I strongly advocate working with a coach of some sort, someone that has, if you're keen to evolve and change your business, why don't learn from somebody like we all say, the best sportsman? I've got coaches, but they're the best people. Why do you need a coach? Because you need someone to help and guide you and point you in the right direction, particularly from someone that's been there before themselves. Brett has got an operation in the Netherlands as well, and he would be one person I would encourage speaking with. So as a result of kind of all these things over a short period of time, I created the vision. Sounds a bit grand, but just sort of about 5 sheets of paper that I wrote down. This is what I would love to have a business. This is what I would like my business to look like in 5 years from now. And it was very, very different to what it was then. So if I know what it has to look like in 5 years, what does it have to look like in 3 years? What's realistic? What will it look like in 12 months from now? Therefore, what do I have to do today and next week? And I read this book as well, which is another book, much more relevant to bigger organizations, but some of the principles remain the same. All good to great companies begin the process of finding the path to greatness by confronting the facts of their current reality. And that's what I had to do, and it was painful. And that, I'm afraid, is what a lot of our UK advisors are not doing. They're not confronting the facts of the current reality because it's too scary. It's called critical non-essentials. It's been taken into the sports world. The England rugby team use a lot of these things. And it's talking about the really small things which in themselves are not essential, but all added up. If you can just improve one thing, you can improve 100 things by 1%, wow, you've really changed the client experience. And it sounds a bit daft, but we have a situation where a client will come to us. We'll make a telephone call. The meeting will be confirmed. They'll get a letter in the post, not by email, but something physical in the post. There'll be a map to our office, all the details. This is what to bring, scheduled out, standardized. We're expecting the client to be there. So we've got a nice office in the center of London. We invite people in to come and see us. They'll be greeted at the door by one of my assistants. They'll be greeted by name. Hello, Mr. Boskamp. Nice to meet you. We're expecting you. If you'd just like to take a seat, can I offer you a refreshment? And we have coffee machines, or cappuccino and lattes and soft drinks and all that sort of stuff. And it sounds, so what? You do coffee, big deal. But it's a bit different. And people don't normally experience that when they usually get some styrofoam cup, if they're lucky, with some horrible coffee or tea in it. So, and also once they've had whatever choice they have, and occasionally someone will say, "Oh, do you have lemon tea or do you have Earl Grey?" Well, usually we do, and if we don't, we'll send out for it. But we record that on our system. So next time they come in, It's, hallo Mr. Boskamp, is it lemon tea you'd like again? And again, people just have this sense of, oh, this is different. I like it. I enjoy it. And they care about me. And it's just about having a system, having a process. So, I've looked at sort of what the future might look like. I've looked at kind of the past and the present. So where are we today? Where's my business? I mean, Mark's very kind, and he says a lot of good, positive things about us. We did pick up the Citywire Award, but you know, we picked up the Institute of Financial Planning Award. We was just the Money Marketing IFA of the Year, the Private Client Practitioner. We picked up in our world, like the World Cup, the Champions League, Wimbledon, and a couple of Oscars. And I don't say that to brag, I really don't. I mean, I'm proud. I'm proud of what we've done. I am, and the team that did it with me. But I say that really because it wasn't that long ago. Well, it was 5 years ago when we were the business that I described earlier on. We were just a not very good business, doing our best, but not really delivering quality of service. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, thank goodness, that survives. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. And we're certainly not the strongest. We weren't the strongest business. We definitely weren't the most intelligent. There's a lot more brighter people out there. But we were a business that was very adaptable to change. We wanted to change. We knew there was something wrong, and we sought the answers everywhere we possibly could. So I hope we've moved much further towards the right of those graphics, and there's quite a few advisors in the UK who are still very much on the left-hand side. In fact, one or two are the very far left. And so that's my question to you. Where will you be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? Wherever you decide to be, I suggest you start today.
Add one other point here, that I've helped about 500 firms adopt this sort of process and deliver this service. And in a recent survey and in meetings and so on, the feedback that I've had is that hardly any of them lost any business from clients when the markets went pear-shaped. Most of them received hardly any telephone calls from their clients. Hardly. Yet other advisors who were probably trying to be investment managers were getting calls every second, and our guys just didn't get any real worry. One or two people called, of course they did, and then eventually they either came in for an early meeting to give them that reassurance that Alan just mentioned. But the reason is, one of the things I try and say to clients, and this is something for you to take away possibly, is this, that we're talking here about financial planning. Okay, financial planning is a bit like getting fit. You can't go to the gym once and expect to be fit for life, can you? It just doesn't work. Financial planning is the same. It's an ongoing process, ongoing. And therefore, the chart you saw as an example financial plan for these clients, their future, that was the first experience they had. Every year, we review it. And I say to clients, look, financial planning is a bit like, if a plane takes off from Amsterdam to New York, it's been proven that it's off target 95% of the time. It's off course. But the reason it ends up in New York and not Zimbabwe is because of the autopilot, yeah? The electronics, the systems are in place to keep tweaking and getting back on course, yeah? And that's what we do. We're the client's autopilot, the GPS, if you like, that helps them get there. So the point I'm trying to make is this, that if you try and sell a financial plan for a fee, clients often go, woo, it sounds like a good idea what you're telling me, Paul, but I do want one. I would like one, but can we have one next year? This year, can you just do my investment for me, or my pension plan, or my mortgage, you see? So next year, I will have one off you, Paul, honestly, and next year, yeah? And then next year, there's always another reason why it'll be next year, you see? Because what they want to do with their money is to have a new car, or a holiday, or a new fridge. They don't want to pay you money for financial advice. It's not compulsory. It's not the law that you've got to have one, you know? So if you go around trying to sell a financial plan, you'll go broke. Okay? So what I say to clients is don't try and sell a financial plan, demonstrate a financial plan with that client's information in the plan. Then they get the value. Does that make sense? Okay? So sometimes I have to do a little bit of work without always being guaranteed that I'll be paid. Does that make sense? So I need to let them see what it looks like, let them experience my service. So what I would always say to a client is, at the first meeting is, I've got a way of approaching new clients, certainly, And that is, I always start a first meeting off with a client by saying to them, the first greeting words that I would say with a client is this, thank you for coming to see me today, Mr. Client. I understand you've been referred to us by Fred. Yeah? What I'd like to say to you right up front, Mr. Client, is this, that although we've been a benefit to Fred, a great benefit to Fred, I can't guarantee at this stage whether anything I say to you today will be of any interest or benefit to you. Okay? The purpose of this meeting, which is at my expense, is to find out a little bit more about you and you a little bit about me, and then in an hour's time or so, you can decide whether you'd like to move it forward or not. Is that okay with you? Is that a nice approach? It's soft, isn't it? So today's about you, really, and normally they just open up and go, and they relax. I'm not trying to sell them anything. Now, they don't know that in an hour's time, I've got all sorts of information about what they're trying to achieve. I know about their assets because I've gone through those questions on my questionnaire, and I've shown them the bucket. And then they're saying, my God, that's what I want. You see? So you see my point? To get them to the stage of understanding. Now I can pitch my fee if I want to, or I might defer the fee if it's a fee that will frighten them off, if I want them to see it first. Does that make sense? Now the key point is this, and I think this is your opportunity. My guess is this is your opportunity over here. If charges are becoming more transparent, and certainly if the banks suddenly currently control your market, yeah, and that's all starting to break down and charges will start to get disclosed hopefully from the banks as well, then if you think about this for a second, if I can help a client understand that stuff first and the software and help them see what their future looks like, and I know that I personally have a minimum fee per client, I can normally save a client for £2,000, £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 a year on a reasonable sized portfolio just by getting them out of silly, active, expensive funds they shouldn't even be in the first place. By possibly going the passive route, and certainly from the sound of it, these guys' products certainly can help you engineer where the margin goes to you rather than to big greedy banks and investment providers. You know? In the UK, you can have a charge every year on certain investment funds in the UK of 3%, 5% or 6% a year. But I could manage that client to get market returns for 1%, including 1.5% a year, including my fee, 1% a year. And they're still much better off now, you see. So I wouldn't worry too much about how you're going to be paid, because I'm sure you can find ways of justifying why that makes sense. But don't frighten people off with this big fee, because I'll just say next year, but not now. So I have a different view of TCF. It shouldn't be treating customers fairly. It should be treating clients fantastically. That's what it's about, yeah? Now, it also is TCF. It's not TCE. TCE is treating customers equally. It's not about TCE, okay? So equally, what I mean by that is fees and how much they pay. Some advisors have a real hang-up over how one client might pay £2,500 a year and another client pays £10,000 or £15,000 a year for what arguably looks like the same service. But as Alan's just said, bigger assets can imply more liability, and therefore I need profit to counter that liability, yeah? But more importantly, if estate agents in the UK are not the most trusted profession either, I'm sure, but estate agents, when you sell your house, if I sell my house, I pay a much bigger fee than the guy who sells a little small property, you know? And I accept that, and most people do accept that. If it becomes a problem, normally it's in your head, I found, not the client's head. Or because you made too much focus on how you get paid and not enough focus on what you do.
Yeah, great. Well, good fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to see you. Yeah.
I hope I see you again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, nice to see you. Yeah. Good.
Thank you. You look like
Hi. Nice to see you.
truly inspiring.
Oh, really? You enjoyed it? Good.
Yeah.
It was worth coming then.
Oh yeah, I have the blueprint, but it's nice to have a mirror
Sure,
and
yeah.
experience, and it's rare to find